Hello, Coach Holmes here, and today we're going to be talking about midpoint formula. So, first of all, what is the midpoint formula? Well, the formula happens to be mxy, which this is the actual midpoint, given that this is the midpoint on the graph, is equal to x1 plus x2 over 2, comma, y1 plus y2 over 2. So basically what the idea is that if we're given 2 points here, okay? So say this is x1, comma, y1, this is x2, comma, y2. If we at least take the average of both the x values and the y values, we actually get the midpoint. So in order to actually figure out the midpoint of a graph, or on a graph, we just gotta take the average of both x's and y's. Okay? Now, what about a number line? So let's say I have a number line like this. So if I have these 2 points here, -1 and 6, one way that we could actually find the midpoint is by counting how many spaces is between and just dividing it by 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 spaces divided by 2, that's 3.5. So if I count 3.5 spaces, 1, 2, 3.5 is about right there. But again, if we think about it in this term, if we can at least take the average of 6 and -1, we'll actually get the midpoint. So 6 plus -1, that's going to give me 5. But if I divide 5 by 2, I actually get 2.5. So even on a number line, if I can just take the average of those 2 points, I'll actually get my midpoint. And that's how we're actually going to go about finding midpoint. We got to take the average of both endpoints, of both values. So for example, samples on a number line or endpoints. So let's say I have a 2 points right here. I have one at 2, and I have one at 7. So really, I just gotta find the average between 7 and 2. So 2 plus 7 divided by 2, because there's only 2 values we're taking the average of. 2 plus 7 is 9, divided by 2 is 4.5. So my midpoint is about right there, where the x is. That's about halfway between 2 and 7. Now, if I want to find the midpoint between -7 and 2, well, that's not going to be too hard, because again, I just got to take the average. So -7 plus 2 over 2 equals -5 divided by 2, and -5 divided by 2 is -2.5. Forgot to box this also. Okay? So the average between the two is actually, so the average between the two, -7 and +2, is -2.5. Now, what about samples on a graph or a coordinate grid? How are we going to be able to find that? Well, first off, on this graph, let's look at the points that we have. So my first point right here, 1, 2, -2, +1. So first, I just want to identify the points. So my first point is -2, +1. My second point, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so the 2 points that we have is -2, 1, and 4, 3. Now, if you recall, so let me write those down real quick. If you recall, my midpoint of xy is actually going to be x1 plus x2 over 2, comma, y1 plus y2. So all I gotta do is just figure out which one's gonna be x1, x2, y1, y2. Well, let me label it real quick. So this first point right here, I want to make this x1, y1. This second point, x2, y2. So my two x values happens to be -2 plus 4 over 2, comma, +1 plus 3 over 2. So now all I gotta do is just add them up and divide it by 2. -2 plus 4 happens to give me 2, and that's going to be divided by 2. 1 plus 3 is 4, that's going to be divided by 2 as well. So now 2 divided by 2 is just 1, 4 divided by 2 is 2. So my midpoint is going to be 1, 2. So that's going to be the midpoint of that graph. Now, but what if we don't get a graph? What if we just get 2 coordinate points? Well, same thing, we can still be able to work it out. Because remember, I just gotta know what my x1, x2, and y1 and y2 are. So looking at the endpoints, we have endpoints at -8, +2, and 5, 1. So thinking about it, let's make this x2, y2, and this will be x1, y1. So really it doesn't matter which one's which, just as long as we label it as x2, y2, x1, y1. Okay? Now, my x1 happens to be 5 plus -8 over 2. My y1 is 1 plus y2 is 2. Now, 5 plus -8, that's just 5 minus 8. And I'm just going to rewrite the next, I'm just rewriting the 1 plus 2 over 2. So 5 minus 8, that's just -3 over 2. And then 1 plus 2 is 3 over 2. Now, we could convert this into decimals, but I'm not really too concerned about that. I'm going to leave it as fractions, okay? I want to leave it as fractions. So I'm not too concerned or too worried about that, okay? Now, this isn't in your notes. Hold on. There we go. This isn't in your notes, but I do think it's important to understand how to be able to solve for this. So let's say we'll give it a midpoint at 2, 4. And let's say one of the endpoints happens to be at 1, 1, 1. So this is our first endpoint. Our second endpoint, we don't necessarily know. We don't necessarily know. But by using the formula, we should be able to find the second endpoint. Let me show you. So if you recall, midpoint is mxy equals, the point xy equals x1 plus x2 over 2, comma, y1 plus y2 over 2. So now I just gotta be able to label them. We'll substitute. So I'm gonna say 2 comma 4 equals 1 plus x2 over 2, 1 plus y2 over 2. Now, here's the one thing I can do. I can split these two up and set them equal to the x and to the y. So for example, 1 plus x2 over 2, the x value for this happens to be 2. And the y value that equals to this is 4. So now all I gotta do is just be able to do a little bit of algebra and solve. So for example, so it's dividing first, so I gotta get rid of the division. The inverse of division, remember, is multiplication. So I want to multiply 2 to both sides. 2 times 2 is 4 equals 1 plus x2. In order to get rid of addition, I got to subtract. So I want to subtract 1 from both sides. 3 equals x2. So x2 is equal to 3. Now, in order to solve this, I just do the same thing. It's dividing, so I gotta multiply first. Excuse me. I'm just getting rid of that dot so that way most of y'all don't confuse that with a negative sign. So like I said, multiply 2 to both sides. 2 times 4 is 8. 1 plus, I don't like how it's written. There we go. 1 plus y2, opposite of addition, or the inverse of addition, is subtraction. So subtract 1 from both sides. 8 minus 1 is 7 equals y2. So y2 is equal to 7. So really, our second endpoint right here happens to be the point 3, 7. Okay? So even if we're given the midpoint, we can find the endpoint as long as we set it up accordingly. But the biggest thing I want y'all to understand is that when it comes to finding the midpoint, the biggest thing is being able to find the average of both the x values and the average of the y values. But if we're given just a number line, we just gotta find the average of the two values. So the biggest thing is finding the average of two values in order to help you to find the midpoint. Thank you and have a good day.